So the question is how the Church came to knowledge of Mary's assumption and coronation as Queen of Heaven. You can even bring in the Immaculate Conception into that, because these were, so we'd often talk about the Pope can make something dogma, like he can define something. And there's only two instances where this has happened. In the 1858, I think, he defined the Immaculate Conception, that Mary was conceived without sin, and in 1954, 56, again, I should know these things, Pope Paul VI defined the Assumption of Mary into heaven. So a lot of people say, well, how do you decide this is true after 2,000 years? But the Church always lived as if this was true. It believed it. It was something that the saints spoke about. It was just never defined as dogma. And it's all supposed to be innerly coherent. So Mary bore Christ, and it seems to make sense that God would create this pure vessel. And there's always this spirituality that Mary was the new Eve. So what was the story of Eve? So Eve could have not sinned, right? Eve was created in a perfect relationship with God. It was possible for her not to sin, but she did, which meant that all of us, it's impossible for us not to sin. Because of the fall, because of her brokenness, we can't not sin. Mary, to give her yes to God, had to be able to not sin. So she became this perfect figure, sinless, a worthy vessel to carry Christ, and she became the yes to Eve's no. Mary became this new, just as through Eve, Adam fell, through Mary, Christ could come into the world and save us all and give God the yes. So it's this beautiful balance, and because of Mary's yes, Christ gave that yes so that all of us too could now say yes to God by our redemption, by Christ's life in us. So once you sort of get all that, well, Mary then was protected from original sin. That's her Immaculate Conception. In order for her to be a vessel for God, she was pure. And if one of the consequences of original sin is corruption and death, Mary would have been preserved from that. So she would have been lifted up into heaven, body and soul. Her body wouldn't have experienced corruption because it never knew the corruption of sin. And then Christ speaks of how his right hand is reserved for her. We read in the Revelation, this image of Mary as this queen enthroned next to Christ. So a lot of it, it's part of this, it's not like it's written, Mary became Queen of Heaven, but the beauty of our theology is we take the seed that Christ gave, we see who Christ is, and the more we reflect on it and pray on it and deepen our knowledge of it, we expand it and come to a deeper understanding of it.